our first one in a while. I've been pretty busy, so re-kicking off the series here. And Alex, you are a good friend. You've been a client of Abundance for a few years, and also have had an awesome journey as a sales leader that we're going to dive into today. So before we kick off, let me just say that, for anybody who's watching this show, this is a show that we have here at Abundant that's introducing you to other sales leaders in the marketplace who are kicking ass and doing it in a really aligned way that's making a huge impact in the marketplace. And Kremer is definitely one of those individuals. And we're going to start off today by doing a quick little drop-in. We're going to do a heart lock, my friend. And then we're going to dive into the meat and potatoes of today. By the way, I'm coming to you from a cafe in Williams, California. I needed to get some me space, so I drove to a hot springs last night that is off the grid. And my two options were to hike an hour to a weather station that has Wi-Fi, apparently, but I wasn't quite sure if that was going to work, or drive an hour into town for some Wi-Fi. So here I am in a country cafe with inspiring country plaques around me, like one right in front of me that says, "Be the person that your dog thinks you are." So that's where I'm at.
I like your background. I also like the handkerchief, acting both as like a face mask, also like a little fashion statement too. I mean, you're crushing it, man.
Yeah, and I'm ready to go. If I need to go plow some fields later today in Williams, California, I'm ready to go.
I like it.
So with that, Alex, let's just slow down for a minute and let's close our eyes, put our hands on our heart. And let's bring our presence and our awareness to the area beneath our hands as we begin to breathe into our heart. And now let's activate a genuine sense of appreciation and gratitude for whatever we're sincerely grateful for right now. All right, and whenever you're ready, Alex, you can open your eyes. Come on back. And what came up for you?
I think what came up for me right then was just gratitude for being here. Ben, you and I have had quite a journey over the past. I've known you for like 4 years now. I met you when I was initially living in San Francisco. And when I initially met you, I was working at Microsoft. I was crushing it in sales, at least what I thought sales was at the time. And I had kind of my life reframed for me from you and the rest of the Abundant team. And so much of how it was reframed was a life meant not just crushing quota and making a shit ton of money and that sort of thing, which, don't get me wrong, I love crushing quota and I love trying to make as much money as possible, but
crushing quota, crushing Polk Street,
all of that, but more finding a way to live your life with a certain sense of purpose and providing genuine value, not just to your clients, but to the people on your team as well. And one thing that, you and I, we talk about so often is, what is your North Star? What is your vision? What are you trying to become? And so much of your North Star and the value of that is who it caused you to be right now. And, I have a huge vision of what I want to do and the purpose. And I just think of the person who needs, who I need to be now to embody that, was here right now talking to you and doing that. And calling me out and stretching a little bit outside my comfort zone in various types of ways. But that's the shit that's only that's worth doing, I guess you can say. So
Absolutely. It's been a fun journey, my friend.
yeah, man.
So I'll just share too. I'm just really grateful for my amazing wife today. As yesterday, after like a month and a half of just really hitting it hard, I kind of got to my breaking point and I was like, baby, I need some space. I need to go to the hot springs. And she was super supportive and willing to hold it down with the girls for the next few days. So just really grateful to have a partner who is willing to support me that way when I need it. As this is not just for me. This is for my family. This is for everybody who I support in taking care of myself. So just grateful to have a wife who really supports me in that way. So Alex, great to have you here. And yeah, I think let's start right where you started there, which is the beginning of our journey together. And if we can go back to when we first met and your first immersion ever, your first time working with Abundant, what was life about for you prior to that immersion? Like, what did you care about? What did you value? What were you focusing on? What was life about for you back then?
Yeah. So when you and I met, I had been living in San Francisco for about 2 years or so. I was working at Microsoft. I was an account executive there. And I was crushing it on paper, I guess you could say. I mean, I was, the number one on my team. I had been promoted extremely fast. But there was like this deep seated, what am I doing sort of thing. Like, yeah, this is great. And I feel like I'm supposed to be doing well, but underneath I felt a lack of, I guess, my calling. And I was kind of wandering a little bit, trying to say, well, if this isn't it, what is it? And you and I met, I think you and I met around like June of 2017. And I remember, that year was extremely tough for me leading up to that moment I've always considered myself a very positive person, a very extroverted person. If someone would ask me back then how I was, I would say, I'm doing awesome for two reasons. One was hopefully they would see that and be like, oh, this guy's feeling awesome. I think that makes me kind of feel a little more awesome too. And the second purpose was I would hear it. It would go into my ear, right? And start to kind of brainwash myself into thinking I'm doing awesome, even if deep down I wasn't quite feeling that. And that feeling, that experience of continually pushing down how I truly felt, it eventually caught up to me. And I went through a self-diagnosed state of depression where I slept in a lot. I didn't want to talk to people, and I love people, and I didn't want to go to work or anything along those lines. And so I chose, as opposed to doing what I previously did of trying to distract myself with various things, I chose to say, all right, depression, all right, anxiety and insecurity, what's up? Sounds like we need to have a conversation because you've been banging on my door for a good amount of time now. And it's just funny because that was when, or my sister, she actually sent me a book called The Wounded Warrior. And it was when I first started really getting into meditation. It was when I first really started getting into journaling a lot. And just, started just like developing a better relationship with like, who am I and what do I care about? And I don't know when the flip was, but I came out of that probably 4 months later of just feeling in the flow, I guess you could say, of I was putting out positive energy and positive energy was being attracted right back to me. There was still that like questioning of like, what am I here to be doing sort of thing. But I was kind of aligned with myself. And when this good energy was being attracted back to me, I got a random out of the blue LinkedIn message from Zach Wagner, who's your partner in crime, asking me, is there something more? Do you feel a calling for something more? And I ended up going over to what was it called? The place where you guys used to have
the factory.
The factory in San Francisco. And I remember I had like
the
a 2 hour
house in all of San Francisco.
Oh, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember just having a 2-hour conversation about like real shit, like real stuff that we were just actually talking about, like what's the core of it. And I remember Zach asked me some really powerful questions, and you asked me some really powerful questions of saying, if you continue to do exactly what you're doing, and 5 years from now, how are you going to feel? 20 years from now, how are you going to feel if you keep on feeling the same way? And it got me a combination of bummed out and also pissed off sort of thing, because I've been given a ton of my life. I have a great father, great mother, great family, grew up down in San Diego. And I always have felt, because I've been, blessed with so much, I feel a sense of responsibility with that, right? A sense of responsibility that if I just am selfish and keep that all to myself, it's kind of like me, giving the middle finger to the all being, the creator. And I knew that I had a certain something to give, a certain purpose of value to give. I just didn't know what it was or how it meant to feel. And that was then when I met you guys, and you just challenged me so much to think what is really possible. And if you did choose to commit to that, not just necessarily what it was more of, well, how would you feel? And how would that manifest itself? What would the impact of that be to you and to those close around you and to your team and whatnot? And let's just say that started a journey of me moving back to Seattle to get more grounded, me leaving Microsoft to go to a new company called Outreach, which I'm at right now, and I lead a sales team. And it like kicked off this just huge momentum of, wow, this changed what I was doing. So I guess to sum up your question, I was asking a lot of questions to myself. Some of them were the right questions. A lot of them were not the right questions. Mm-hmm. I think you guys want to do that.
And it's also like, are you committed to the question? Because a lot of times it's like the question pops up like, what am I really doing? Or, and that's a lot of who we work with, is people who focus on, how can I be the best salesperson that I can possibly be? Mm-hmm. And you're crushing quota, you're making the money that you thought you were supposed to make when you were in college, and you set, a lot of people, it's interesting. I say this a lot. I'm like, if you're still following the vision that you had in college, like something's wrong, because you were probably wasted most of the time as you came up with that vision, right? It's like, what did you value then, right?
Yeah.
What did you value in college? So what kind of vision are you going to have from what you valued in college? It's like your vision's got to evolve. It's got to develop. And I think a lot of people get to that point where they're like, okay, I've realized at least somewhat of what that vision was that I had when I was becoming a man or a woman. And like, I thought that I was an adult now because I'd graduated and I had these goals and I went after them, and like something's still missing. Mm-hmm. So what am I doing, and why am I doing it? And what do I really want? And then sometimes our environment doesn't support that. And, we check out. It's like, we don't commit to the question. Mm-hmm. I think about those times for myself. And I actually, yesterday, I was laying in the water at the hot springs, just kind of looking up at the stars. And I'm like, oh man, I'm so grateful that I chose to do this, because like 10 years ago, my response would have, like when I hit a breaking point, or I was like, like I need space, or just something's missing right now. My response would have been like, let's go out tonight, or I'll just pop an Adderall in the morning and that'll fix it. Like I had a prescription, right? But it was like, you know, oh, that'll just take care of it, versus actually being committed to the question and doing the work necessary to bring more purpose and alignment to the work that you're doing. So
I love what you say there. And I remember when I was ready for the next thing, when I realized I wasn't getting the fulfillment that I was looking for, I was asking myself a lot of the questions of, okay, well, what is it? What is it that I want to do right now? Right? Is it sales? Is it leadership? Is it marketing? Like, is it at a tech company? I was actually getting stuck and hitting my head on the ceiling of what is it I want to be doing? And so I chose to reframe the question that I was asking myself to, well, how do I want to feel at my next thing? What are the important aspects of the next thing I do? And it was through a lot of conversations and work with you guys and journaling and to be honest, meditation, that I ended up coming up with, three main things, three hows that were important to me. And one was I wanted to be extremely challenged. Right? I wanted to feel, kind of be in the point, be like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then being forced to kind of lean in and grow from that. The second thing I really wanted was I wanted a genuine team, like a crew, a family. I didn't want to be part of a team that was just a bunch of individual contributors who happen to report to the same manager. Right? And then last but not least, I wanted an opportunity for leadership, whether it was right away or get in there and work my way towards leadership. And once I got clear on these hows and that, at least the things that were important to me, as I was looking at my next opportunities and interviewing at all these different companies, when they would ask me, number one, what I was looking for, I could be very clear and communicate that. But also, I was interviewing them. I was asking them questions, not to look good as an interviewer, but I was asking questions to say, are you actually the aligned next step for?
Yeah. Not just the next notch in the belt, which is how a lot of people approach a search, is like, well, what's like a notch that's bigger than the last notch, right? Is it better for my resume? Is there more income potential, right? Is it like the hot IPO? Like what's, but there was something deeper you were looking for. And let's talk about that, because you'd made your decision about where you wanted to move to from that clarity, and then found yourself in leadership for the first time pretty soon after you made the move, and like built an awesome team. And you're actually, you're in a new position. You just got promoted this year again. And what's your current position, your current role?
So I lead our corporate enterprise team and here at Outreach, and I'm actually moving out to New York to help to open up our New York office.
Awesome.
So lots of exciting and the next adventure, I guess you can say, too.
A new adventure, especially in COVID, right? It's like creating culture, leading a new team in this time of uncertainty, which, this position is still pretty new for you. And like you have this opportunity to be leading your current team because of what you did with your last team. And let's talk about that. Like so your previous team that you led, your first leadership position was the SMB team. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was an account executive for a year, and I said right from the very beginning that I wanted to step into a leadership role. And I said, I don't want you to give that to me. I want to start to inhabit and to embody the qualities of the person that would be an effective leader. And that was a conversation I was continually having, not just with my direct manager, but I was speaking with tons of people internally at the company of, for someone who steps into a management role, what's important to you within that? I talked to people from our customer success side, our professional services time, our support side, all that. So I could just really get an understanding. And then, lo and behold, I ended up getting that opportunity. And
and I just want to jump in for a minute, because like that wasn't an accident. It was really intentional. Right? I remember the conversations you and I had where you designed those conversations, and you were intentional about like talking to all these leaders so that one, you were planting seeds with them, but two, you were getting really clear. Like you weren't just like waiting till you achieved a certain number and like you earned it. right? You were becoming the version of yourself. And actually, I want to ask you, what were some of the other things that you were doing before you were a manager? Because I think a lot of people want to be leaders and they're like, oh, I'll be a leader once I'm a manager. But what are the ways that you were embodying leadership in that first year, even before you were a manager? How did you go above and beyond and show up for people around you and below you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple things. Number one, the way that I viewed myself, I was not a sales rep. I was a sales professional. And what that meant is it brought a level of intentionality in terms of not just how I did my discovery and did my demos and proposed and negotiated, but also how I learned and studied and was curious with it. I remember you and I had a conversation. I still remember this day. I was like, Ben, I really want to become a better closer. Like, I'm doing great up to the point, but like when it comes to actually closing the business, I need to, like, that's where I want to do it. And then you asked me, why? Why is that? Like, who would you become in doing that? And you started asking me, like, what would be the impact on that to yourself? If you were a better closer, what would the impact be on you and your friends, you and your relationship with your parents, you and your girlfriend? Like, what would that impact be? And as you walked me through this, all of a sudden I had this vision of who I would become. And I was like, damn, now I really want to become that person. I really want to become that closer, because not just I'm a good closer, but who it forces me to be. He said, awesome. Now that you sold yourself, the execution part is easy. You find a mentor. You go to the top closers at your organization. You ask them to mentor you. You study books. Like, the execution was actually easy, but the why behind it and why I wanted to be a great sales professional was the number one thing that was the most important. So I did that. And then there was some SDRs at our organization that had the goal of eventually moving up to an AE, which was where I was at. And I actually went to them and I said, hey, I eventually want to move up into a management type of position. I know you eventually want to move into an AE. I would love the opportunity to mentor you. And it kind of took a little bit of like vulnerability of asking to mentor somebody else, because usually you ask someone to be your mentor, but I asked to mentor someone. And I ended up mentoring 4 people there. And I remember one time I was with this guy, Devin, that he's like, hey, Alex, would you mind walking me through the initial meeting deck? And I was like, absolutely, I'd be happy to. And I went through it, and I still remember this because he said, Alex, I didn't realize how much psychology is built into our initial meeting. And my response was, you know what? I didn't either until I was just forced to explain it to you. And it was such a wonderful lesson to me of, to become a master at something, or to begin on the journey of mastering something, is to first off not view yourself as one, and second, to teach, right? And to force yourself to explain it. And it gives you such another level. And between how I went in and was studying, between how I was mentoring, I then also created a cohort of all the AEs. And I would hold weekly meetings where I'd bring a topic and we'd talk about it. And it was a lot about not just how can we close more deals, but also how are you showing up and being authentic, and like, what are the things that you're struggling with your mind right now, and just creating an environment and a space where we could be honest with that. And by the time this new opportunity opened up to finally build out our SMB organization, I threw my hat in the ring, and my VP of sales, after many times with him saying like, I'm not sure. He came up to me, he's like, I've been seeing what you've been doing over the past 6 to 12 months, dude. And by the way, I can't tell you how many leaders from other parts of our business have come up to me and talked about an impactful conversation that you've had with them and the level of intentionality that you've brought. It's like, you're the best person for this job. And I got in, and there was initially 4 people on that team, and we grew that whole.
Let's pause just for a moment. And number one, for those of you watching, if you have questions for Alex, feel free to ask in the chat box below or comment on the video, and we'll ask them live if you have any. So hello to all of you who are viewing. And just something I want to point out that you spoke to
Yeah.
right? You were in your position. You were really in, and there's a question here, which I'll ask. So Alex, someone has the question, and it's, what have you noticed that shifted? So what did you notice shifted with those you've mentored, and how has that changed your organization?
Good question. I think a lot of what I was initially trying to do was to inspire.
Yeah.
And I almost think of like being in a big line of people and there's a bunch of people behind me, and by me inspiring, it's literally me turning around and inspiring them to try to do something, which is kind of stopping the progression and forcing me to stop. And what I tried to do, as opposed to inspiring, I chose to aspire, of me living a certain way, of me living a way of not just authenticity, but also a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. And I found that when I was actually focused on that, they were just following right along with me. And when it came to talking about selling our platform, it became a lot more of, yeah, let's sell it, but think about the value that we're actually going to provide them, of helping them get their product or service or their value out more. Think of the impact we'll have on their organization of selling better. And so there was a sense of purpose that then we all felt. There was a sense of authenticity that all of a sudden it wasn't taboo to talk about, I'm not feeling super hot. I'm coming from a point of scarcity. And for us to create a space to talk about it. And I think, all those things together, the thing that was the most impactful of people felt part of something bigger than themselves. People felt on a team, on a crew, on a family that was not just holding each other accountable to a higher standard, but it became less of, these are my workmates, to more of like, this is my crew. And like, you feel that energy. Like when one person is showing up that way, that is contagious. And it's just what makes my life a hell of a lot easier too, when everybody else is showing up that way.
Yeah. And what I really hear you speaking to also is like, you were on the sales mastery journey. Like, I think a lot of people have the question of like, how do I sell more? Like, what do I need to be doing differently? And whenever someone has that question, there's always something they need to be doing differently in the way that they sell. But to really be on the sales mastery journey, you also have to honor that deeper connection to purpose. Mm-hmm. Because it takes, like, it's not fucking woo-woo, right? Like, you need the energy to get up and drive and deal with resistance and rejection every single day. It's like, if you're not connected to a purpose, you're just not going to do that as effectively. You're not going to want to do that, right? So you were connecting to that yourself. And by the way, if you want to connect others to purpose congruently and powerfully, you have to be connected to purpose yourself. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they're not going to buy it. Like, they're not going to buy the energy behind your questions because it's not there. It doesn't exist because you're not doing the work yourself. But the other big thing that you spoke to is like how you took on the mantle of sharing this with people around you, right? So there are 3 P's of mastery, and it's perceive, practice, and preach. Perceive, practice, and preach, right? So perceive means learning, right? You were obviously investing into yourself. You were learning a lot about how to sell, how to be a leader. So you were perceiving this new way to sell and lead, and you were practicing it. You were taking it back and you were implementing it right away, and you were preaching it. You were preaching it to those around you. You were teaching it. And when you're doing all 3, that's where the mastery really begins to grow. So it's like, how do I sell more? Well, there's some things you have to do differently in how you sell, but you also have to do all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And actually, sometimes it's not about how you're selling. It's the things that you do outside of selling that are going to make you a better seller. And that's what I just really hear in your journey. That is confusing to people at times, and they resist, and they're like, is that really important? It's like, yeah, that's actually how it works. That's actually how it works. So I love your example of that.
It's like, I remember when I was still a rep, I wrote 400K on my whiteboard at my desk, because that was my goal for the quarter. It was like a audacious goal sort of thing. And I remember looking at every single day, and I ended up becoming so focused on the number that I was trying to string together the deals in order to hit that number. Right. And even just saying that, that is coming from such a point of serving myself. Right. And just like trying to get them to buy as opposed to actually adding value to them. And I remember, I think it was a conversation with you. It was more of, okay, for the person who hits that 400K number, what is that person like? What are the characteristics of them? What are the routines and habits? And it became of like, how often are they working out? How often do they call their mom? Right? What do they put in their body in terms of what do they eat? Do they drink alcohol? When they do, how much do they drink? And all these different types of things. And I started to say, okay, that's the version of myself that I need to be. And again, it just became cool, execute. Right? Just create these habits around it. And then you can start to show up. And again, the purpose of the vision, and you say this all the time, is not who it's going to make you be, it's who it causes you to be right now. That's the purpose of it. And that allowed me to kind of go from there.
Awesome. So to shift gears here a little bit, going into the next stage of your journey, tell us about the team that you built, right? So there were 4 people initially, but you built an amazing culture along with Nathan Broom in that organization. And just share about that journey a bit. Like what happened as the team grew from initially 4, and what was the culture like that you created, and how did you guys do it?
Yeah. So first off, I'll say I did not create this culture on my own. I would love to take full credit for that. There was many incredible people. Our company is phenomenal. The leadership is phenomenal. So I feel blessed to be able to play a role within it. But I would say, it started out with those 4 people, and that kind of became the crew. And I actually still lead 2 of them, actually. And we started to create a place. We're saying we're the founding members of this segment here. We're the founding members of what it means to be on this team and how we hold ourselves and how we choose to collaborate and be part of this. And to see how they responded and chose to take ownership of it, because they also were looking for something to be part of, right? They felt the exact same way that I did. Like, I want to be part of something bigger than me. And when you give them the opportunity to take ownership of that and to be a leader within it, they grabbed the reins just like that. And it became way less of me telling them what to do. And it created, my goal was, I just wanted to create a space, create an environment where everybody felt the ability to show up as their most authentic self and contribute towards it and to collaborate on it. And as we started to grow and build the team, and whether it was promote people internally to AEs or bringing people from the outside, every single time we would bring somebody in, we very much create a space where like, hey, everybody has been where they are before. Everybody knows what it's like to be new, to sell a new product, to be maybe a first-time closer. Like, and one of our core values is have each other's back. And it became something that we didn't just talk about, like we chose to lean in towards it. And, obviously this is pre-COVID, so we were going into the office every single day. And there was no better feeling than going into the office and just feeling the energy and the buzz. Like, that was the best. And I remember every single day, we have a early morning crew, usually. It'd be like around 7 a.m. and about everybody was in, and I just go around and I just give a little fist bump just to everybody. And I started doing that because our CEO, Manny, he used to do that when we were a smaller company. And it was just a simple fist bump, but just the fist bump made me feel like we're in this together. It was so much more than that. And now we try to give virtual fist bumps, obviously, but it just made people feel like they were doing something. We were feeling something. And Yeah, I mean, we grew that out to about 25 people before I moved on and got promoted up to corporate and then obviously to enterprise. But it was the energy. It was the feeling of we're part of a family, not just a bunch of individual contributors. And a lot of times when we would teach each other what we were doing, it was, yes, the goal of this is for you to be effective right now in what you're doing, but it's so much more about that. It's you are learning the skills, you are building the strengths so that if you stay here and work your way up, you're going to crush it. But if you go somewhere else and you bring this mindset, you are investing into yourself as a professional and a sales professional, whatever you want to call it. And it was just, there was such an aligned sense of altruistic purpose beyond right now. And I guess that was the environment that we tried to create.
Yeah, I think my question for you is like, how important do you think that mindset is in sales versus like, oh, it's my job?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. I mean, when you are trying to just close business, when you're just trying to show up and do your job, sometimes you can show up and fake it until you make it sort of thing. But if you're coming from a place of emptiness, whether or not people realize or acknowledge it, they feel it. They feel that you're just a person trying to get the sale done, right? They feel that you're just another person, right? But when you're showing up from a sense of abundance and alignment and actually trying to impact people in a positive way and actually trying to create a positive connection, like one of my favorite questions to ask within a sales process, and I say this in a genuine way, I always say, hey, let me take off my outreach hat. You take off your company hat real quick. What's important to you? Like, what do you actually care about? Because in addition to trying to get this problem solved and to have you use our software, whatever it is, like, what's a win for you that I can actually help and support you with? And when you show up with that and you have that kind of conviction like that, because it's coming from truth, like, people don't do, that's not common. People don't say, what can I actually do to help you, and actually mean it? That's the type of people, whether or not you close a deal or not, that's the type of people that you've now created a brand of yourself of that. There's something that the person's doing right there and they actually care. And I want to associate with them and potentially associate with their company as well.
Awesome. Well, Alex, we are getting close to the end here. Thanks for everything you've shared, man. Like, some awesome stuff. It's just great to share your journey with everybody else, because it's not an ordinary journey. Like, you've risen really quickly as a leader, and you've made a lot of leaps, one after the other, to get to where you're at right now. And so I think you're definitely somebody that people should be listening to and like taking notes on your journey and how you've gotten to where you're at. And I'm just, curious here to wrap up. If you think about, it's like you're still on your journey, right? And there's some really cool shit that you've done, and like so much more to come. And I think one of the questions that I have is just 2020 has been a wild year for everybody, and everybody's expectations have been thrown out from, honestly, the beginning of 2020 feels like 3 years ago to me. I'm like, yeah, it's just such a totally different world. So what's the biggest impact that 2020 has had on you? Which is also the biggest impact you have had on you, but you within 2020.
Yeah. So, couple things. Number one, you say, I've had a fantastic journey up to this point. 100% I have. But I will also say I am, and you've heard me say this before, I am very much at the very beginning of the beginning, right? I know nothing is how I feel. There is so much out there that if I even tried to become an expert in it, I would probably be really awakened the next day and be like, actually, you didn't know shit about that. And so and that doesn't scare me. In fact, that excites me more than anything, is I'm still at the very beginning of the beginning. And there's so much out there for me to learn and to gain an understanding of and gain a sense of wisdom from that. I'd say one of the biggest impacts that 2020 has had on me, and I don't think this is uncommon, is it's forced you to reflect. And for me, there's been a lot of transitions that have happened, but what it has caused me to do is really look internally and find things that have always been coming up. I just haven't acknowledged it or been aware, whether it's a certain sense of insecurity, a certain sense of looking for people to like me, a certain sense of whatever it is, depression, you name it. And previously I've chosen to say either disassociate with that or just push it deep down. And I think now I'm starting to say, okay, what's this thing that's really coming up inside of me, and choosing to kind of let that part unravel and to feel the energy start to flow through me when I start to develop relationships with various parts of myself that I typically hadn't. And it's also taught me how to lean into the hard moments, because the hard moments are the best times. The moments where you're just like, I can't do this anymore, and to lean into that. The moments where your manager is coaching you a way that you're like, this isn't how I like to be coached, and to choose to lean into that and actually manage up at times, but like, hey, this is how I like to be coached, and to speak your needs with that. And overall, I know I've said this word a lot, but it's just be authentic. Like, I am a weird person, and I want to fucking own that. Like, I am weird, and I am a very enthusiastic person. I love speaking and I love all this sort of stuff, and just own that parts of you, both the amazing parts as well as the parts that I have a huge area of growth for. Own those parts. And knowing and trusting that, well, that's just the shit worth doing. Choosing to take the hard path, not choosing to take the easy path.
And choosing to let this be the beginning of the beginning. Because that's an approach. That's a belief. And it's true if you really live that way, if you really approach your career that way. But I think so many people are coming from the opposite point of view in sales, where they're trying to prove that they're already there to everybody around them. It's like, look how I'm already there. Like, look how amazing I already am. And there's a deep insecurity underneath that we could talk about, but also they're shorting themselves, and they're shorting themselves in what they're capable of. Number one, it's like, are you there? Or is that actually you thinking small for you to think that you're already there? But more importantly, it's that they're shorting themselves on getting to experience the journey. Because real success is not what you've done. It's knowing what you want and making progress. That's success. Success is knowing what you want and making progress towards it. Success is being on the journey. And so that approach of like, this is the beginning of the beginning, allows you to experience a journey, which is where that's real success. And it's success because that's real fulfillment. That's where things really feel good. That's where you have the best experience. So, and we all deserve that. We all deserve to be fulfilled and to love the experience we're having in sales and in leadership. So thanks for dropping that nugget, and for being an example of everything that you're speaking to, my man. And it's been a lot of fun to talk with you today, and have you share a bit of your journey with everyone who's watching. So thanks so much.
Thanks, brother. Grateful to be on here, man. This is great.
Our pleasure.